Poilievre humiliates Mark Carney in brutal moment that stuns the room. Even CBC left speechless. In one of the most anticipated moments of Canada's 2025 federal election campaign, Pierre Poilievre, the leader of the Conservative Party, delivered a scathing critique of Prime Minister Mark Carney that left the audience in stunned silence. Even the usually impartial CBC commentators were left momentarily speechless, as Poilievre's powerful words pierced through Carney's carefully constructed economic vision. The clash between the two leaders raised critical questions about Canada's future under a potential fourth Liberal term and the dangerous economic consequences of continuing down the current path. Carney, having assumed office in March 2025, quickly became the center of attention as his leadership was thrust into the spotlight. His candidacy, marked by a sharp focus on global economic management and international relations, has been at the heart of the ongoing debate. While Carney's experience on the international stage as a former Bank of Canada governor and his work with the Bank of England lent him a certain degree of credibility in foreign policy discussions, Poilievre quickly exposed the flaws in Carney's approach to Canada's domestic economic challenges. Poilievre's charge was simple but cutting. The same failed Liberal policies under Justin Trudeau were being repackaged under Carney, and the results would be equally disastrous for Canadian families. At the heart of Poilievre's criticism was Carney's proposal for an additional $130 billion in spending. Poilievre pointed out that this new spending plan, which was to be layered on top of the already substantial fiscal commitments from Trudeau's government, could push Canada deeper into debt, further inflating the national deficit. The country's financial health had already been strained under the previous Liberal leadership, and Poilievre argued that Carney's promises to lead the country out of economic peril were nothing more than a continuation of Trudeau's policies that had already failed to produce meaningful results. To make matters worse, Poilievre warned that Carney's $130 billion spending plan would lead to an additional $250 billion in debt, which would place an unbearable burden on future generations of Canadians. This mounting debt would have direct consequences on Canadian families, driving up the cost of essential goods and services, including food, housing, and taxes. These are costs that Canadians could ill afford, especially as inflation continues to rise, and Poilievre made it clear that under Carney's leadership, Canadians would be facing more of the same economic mismanagement that had characterized the Trudeau era. What set Poilievre's response apart was not just his economic critique, but his question about Carney's motivations for running for Prime Minister. Poilievre asked why Carney, a wealthy former banker with lucrative business ventures, would give up his private sector career to take on the pressures of leading the country. Poilievre didn't mince words. Carney's move was not an act of selfless service to the Canadian people, but a calculated political maneuver designed to continue benefiting his own financial interests. Poilievre pointed out that Carney had built his fortune by shaping policies that favored his own networks, and his budget proposal revealed just how much Carney prioritized global causes over Canada's domestic needs. One glaring example Poilievre highlighted was Carney's push for increased investment in international LGBTQIA+ programs and the continuation of Canada's $800 million foreign aid budget. While Poilievre acknowledged the importance of international cooperation, he argued that Carney's priorities were out of touch with the struggles Canadians face on a daily basis. As Canadian families struggle with rising living costs and job insecurity, Poilievre questioned why Carney was more focused on international issues than on addressing the pressing needs of Canadians. Another major point of contention was Carney's proposed carbon border adjustment mechanism. Poilievre labeled this a globalist agenda that would hurt Canadian consumers and businesses by imposing tariffs on imports from countries without carbon taxes. While Carney claimed this would push other nations to adopt similar carbon policies, Poilievre argued that the policy would have little to no impact on global emissions, particularly in major polluting countries like the US and China. Meanwhile, Canadian businesses and consumers would face higher costs, particularly on imported goods like food and materials. Poilievre warned that retaliatory tariffs from trading partners could further complicate matters, making it even more difficult for Canadian exporters to remain competitive in the global market. In response to Carney's claims that his economic vision would make Canada an energy superpower, Poilievre took aim at Carney's failure to address the country's most pressing energy challenges, particularly the lack of progress on key pipeline projects. Poilievre pointed out that Carney's energy plan seemed hollow, neglecting the essential issues of domestic energy development and the fact that the carbon tax already in place had failed to achieve meaningful emissions reductions. Poilievre emphasized that while Carney's plan might sound appealing in theory, it did little to address the realities faced by Canadians struggling to pay their bills and keep their businesses afloat. Poilievre also criticized Carney's approach to the green economy, which he argued was less about innovation and more about fostering bureaucratic growth. Carney's plans for green investments and support for woke startups were seen by Poilievre as nothing more than an attempt to line the pockets of those with financial connections to Carney's networks. Far from creating a robust and thriving private sector, Poilievre warned that Carney's vision would entrench dependence on the state, making it harder for Canadians to achieve true prosperity and financial independence. As the debate continued, it became increasingly clear that Poilievre was unafraid to challenge Carney's economic policies head-on. Poilievre reminded Canadians of the disastrous effects of previous Liberal governments, which had relied on flawed assumptions about private sector growth. These policies, Poilievre argued, had repeatedly failed to materialize, leaving Canadians with higher taxes, higher costs, and a stagnant economy. With Carney promising more of the same, Poilievre urged Canadians to reject this economic plan and demand a change in leadership. The public response to the debate has been one of heightened concern about Canada's future under a fourth Liberal term. Recent polling has revealed that a growing number of Canadians are skeptical of Carney's promises, with many questioning the feasibility of his economic vision. A Nanos poll, for example, showed that while Carney was still trusted by a majority of Canadians to handle foreign relations, Poilievre's critique of Carney's economic plans resonated strongly with those who were worried about rising debt and inflation. In contrast to Carney's focus on global issues, Poilievre's message has centered on practical policies aimed at reducing taxes, cutting wasteful government spending, and making life more affordable for middle-class Canadians. Conservative policies, such as affordable childcare and dental care, have been widely praised for their potential to save families thousands of dollars. Additionally, Poilievre's commitment to strengthening public safety and securing Canadian borders has struck a chord with voters concerned about the rise in illegal gun trafficking and crime. With the election fast approaching, Canadians are faced with a stark choice: continue down the path of economic uncertainty under Carney's leadership or embrace a new direction under Poilievre's conservative policies. Poilievre's brutal takedown of Carney in the leaders' debate has set the stage for an intense final stretch to Election Day, with voters increasingly aware of the potential dangers of another Liberal term. The question remains, can Mark Carney reassure Canadians that his policies will lead to sustainable economic growth, or will the country face more of the same fiscal mismanagement that has marked Liberal governments in recent years? As the debate intensifies, one thing is clear: Canadians are looking for leadership that will prioritize their needs and provide real solutions to the challenges they face.